Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race. We are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 349 of the Running For Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited that you are here and excited that you get to hear this conversation between my new friend and I. Mechelle Lewis Freeman and I are going to be talking about all kinds of things, including our conversation on Facebook Live, or Instagram Live, that we did have a few weeks ago. And it was a really powerful conversation with myself, Mechelle, and Dawn Harper Nelson. You can hear us talk about that. I also encourage you to go check out the link in the show notes to go watch that. But I want to tell you a little bit about Mechelle before we go any further. She's a graduate of the University of South Carolina, and she was a Olympian back in 2008, where she ran on the 4x1 100 meters relay team. She was also a Pan-American double silver medalist, 2007 world champion, and she ran primarily the 100 and the 400 4x1 relay. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time saying 4x1 today. In addition to all of her accomplishments as an athlete herself, she is the CEO and founder of TrackGirlz, which is a lifestyle brand promoting the women and girls of track and field, empowering them. I love TrackGirlz. It is also where, when you purchase something from Tracksmith, if you are already a customer, Tracksmith will give a donation. If you use the code TINAGIVE, you will hear us mention that. So let's go meet Mechelle Lewis Freeman. Thank you to Dri Seat for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. Now, I have been using sweatproof seat covers for many years. It was something that Steve got me as a gift, a birthday gift, about 10 years ago. And I just realized how much better it is than having to just try and stuff a towel in there after your run. It not really work. You get it soaked through anyway, and just makes a big stinky car. And so I love that these sweatproof seat covers work so well. And now I'm even more excited that I have found one from Dri Seat that gives me the simple protection that works. You can install and remove it in seconds. This slip-resistant backing keeps it in place so it won't scratch, scuff, or stain or discolor your seats. It's easy to use. You're just going to put it on in a few seconds. It's going to go on all cars. They do have a larger version for those of you who do have big trucks. And yeah, it means you don't have to use those sweaty, gross towels that don't actually work that well anyway. The products are made without using neoprene, which I don't need to explain that to you, but it's just not something that works particularly well, but it's what a lot of brands tend to use. These Dri Seats are thin, light, they're not bulky like towels, they're washable, they won't stain. They are just ideal for post-run, especially as we have the summer coming up. They do also have seatbelt covers available, so you can go to DRI-SEATS, that's dri-seats.com, and if you use code R4R20, you will get 20% off your first order. Hassle-free shipping, you get free returns, not that I think you will need it, but go to dri-seats.com and use code R4R20 to get 20% off your first order. This is ideal for runners. These are waterproof, easy to use, well worth it for runners, and even though I was annoyed at Steve when he first bought me a sweatproof seat cover, it really has been something I have really valued, and I can't imagine my life without it in the summer. So go check it out. Go to dri-seats.com, use code R4R20 to get 20% off. Mechelle, I am so excited to welcome you to the Running For Real podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is fun. And you and I just did a Instagram Live recently with our mutual friend, Dawn Harper Nelson, there was so much good in there. And I'm thinking maybe I might somehow share parts of that in this episode, but I haven't decided whether it should be standalone. But that conversation was so needed, and it was just a beautiful just journey of conversations that were all such important topics. So I want to thank you for that conversation, and I want to encourage anyone listening to go check that out. It is on the TrackGirlz page on Instagram, but also on my own. And so go listen to that. But I'm excited for us to dig into some other things today.
Yes.
And it's going to be fun. So thanks for giving us your time to get to know you a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just happy that we're able to have conversations like that, especially with Dawn, just being a teammate of hers and now a mom and a coach, just understanding just different topics from each of those experiences, and just now trying to be in a place to lead the next generation, and with TrackGirlz, just discuss topics that can really help girls develop.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to get deep into TrackGirlz. And actually, while you start with that, so do you want to give, for anyone who doesn't know what TrackGirlz is, they may have heard me mention TrackGirlz in reference to Tracksmith donating to TrackGirlz, but yeah, what is it? If you just want to give a general overview before we go in.
TrackGirlz, is just near and dear to my heart. It's a nonprofit organization I founded to empower girls through track and field. Track and field is the number one participatory sport in the U.S. for middle and high school girls. It's known data points for the sport to have a positive effect physically, mentally, and socially for girls. So, and my own personal experiences can speak to that as well. So just thinking about what the sport, how it impacted my life, I wanted to do the same for other girls. And growing up, my parents, they were big on exposure and access. So I know what it means to be able to open the door for someone to ensure they have the authority to choose what they want to do in life. And that's what the goal of TrackGirlz is to open a door for other girls to be able to, decide what they want to do and use the sport as a platform to do that. So we do that in different ways. Our programs include workshops that allow girls to have those direct mentor contact points with women and girls from the sports, especially with the network that I'm blessed to have access to, Olympians and world champions and high-level coaches. We want to make sure that they can have those direct interactions to have influences just to help guide and motivate and inspire. And of course, you want to do some track and field things. So some fundamental things to make sure they have access to movement and sport, using some basic run, jump, and throw activities. And then our grant program, we give direct resources, money, equipment for girls to have access to track and field in their local communities. We've been able to pay for a racing wheelchair or a track team to have new uniforms, pay for travel fees and membership dues for girls to have access to the sport. So I'm really proud of that because we were able to give away $40,000 next year. But I mean, over $200,000 was requested. So it's still a gap. It's still more work for us to do. And I'm really proud of the curriculum that we've been able to finalize so we can scale what we teach in our workshops. And so we have some really great activities to develop girls socially through our sisterhood activities, our empowerment activities that go over real performance development tools. And then we have our tracktivities, what we call them, but that's when we're giving our movement and our track and field activities to give them that touch point with sport.
Yes, I love all that you are doing. I mean, there's so much there, like you said, the touch points, all the things that are needed to make it possible and realistic and desirable for these young girls to participate in track and continue it and see what they can do and use it as a means of working through other things. I mean, it is clear you put so much thought and energy and love into this to make it, really give people the best chance of getting those opportunities. And I usually begin early on with this podcast with some kind of having you share some kind of realization or epiphany in your life. And typically for someone like you, it would be, maybe your athletic potential, but maybe in this situation, it would be best you mentioned about your parents, like what was a realization epiphany moment that maybe people needed help with this? And yeah, in that way that led to TrackGirlz. So what is a realization or epiphany that led you to this moment right here, right now?
Yeah, I remember I was working at a marketing agency in Atlanta at the time. And on their roster, they had very, a range of high level athletes and coaches, but it was no one from track and field. And I had a conversation with one of the agents, and he spoke on how he didn't think anyone from track and field was relevant outside of Olympic years. It's looked at as an every 4-year sport. But, just from my own personal experiences, I know that's quite different. And I know women who are powerful and inspirational and influential in their own right, who can be tapped into as a resource to influence the next generation. And so I just thought it was a true gap there and misunderstanding that I wanted to help change. Also from a marketing side, that's where my background is in. I understood that I've been called a track girl since I was 14. It was a real tangible community, especially in social media as a hashtag. You can already see that women in the sport were used to sharing experiences and ideas as a track girl. So I wanted to just make that brand a little bit more tangible and breathe life into it, start to create a consistent platform to share stories, to share conversations. And this was in 2015. So I trademarked the name TrackGirlz. I went out there on Instagram and Facebook, and, TrackGirlz wasn't being used. So I started the accounts and just started putting content out there and stories out there, and sharing history. Track and field women have contributed to sport history and culture since the 1920s, going back to the first, Olympic Games when women weren't allowed to compete, and started to trailblaze the way through the Tiger Bells and facing racism and sexism, but still making their impact in the world. So yeah, it was really that moment that made me realize that, it was a space for me to just create that consistency of being able to share the impact of women in the sport, so we can just help. So I could just help materialize the value.
And whereabouts were you in your athletic career at this point? Were you how were you winding down, or were you at the peak? Tell us a bit more about how this aligned with your own, potential there.
Yeah. So at that point, my story is a bit different, just because I competed in track and field, started in high school. My twin sister and I, we were known as fast twins, and someone told us to try out for the track team in high school. So once we tried out, we realized how fast we really were. But we were winning state championships and breaking records, and went on to go to the University of South Carolina, be a part of an amazing group of women. I've always been surrounded with a strong sisterhood through the sport since I've participated. And at University of South Carolina, we brought the first national championship in any sport to the university in 2002. From there, I decided to step away from the sport once I graduated, because I was dealing with recurring injuries and focused on graduate school. Worked in New York City at an ad agency on Madison Avenue. And at that point, I had taken 4 years off from the sport and decided to come back in 2006. And in those 2 years, that's a whole nother storytelling, book producing experiences of, how to believe and produce and get the results. And, I became a world champion and Olympian in those 2 years, and retired pretty early, competed for about 3 years professionally after facing a back injury that I just couldn't bounce back from. So that's when I went back into marketing. And so that's about 2010. And between 2010 and 2014 was when I was back and working in marketing. And that was at that time that I was having those conversations and hearing those things about women in sport and track and field not being relevant. So I was away from the sport for about 3 years when I started to think about TrackGirlz. And founded officially TrackGirlz in 2015. And then also started coaching again in 2015. So I have a roller coaster of experiences going back and forth between sport and corporate America and nonprofit and coaching. So yeah, there I was a retired athlete at that point.
Yeah, there's so much I wanna dive into from that, and I want to definitely go back to the pause that you took, and I discovered that when we were on that Instagram live, and we had a conversation about that, the importance of that, of how it's okay to step away, or if you step away, it doesn't mean it's forever. But before I go into that, I'm so curious with, you, as you've said, you've had these periods where you've been very successful, very good, and then it's like nothing. You like corporate America, working other things, not running or training at all. And then you're back in intensely, and then you're back out again. But this whole time you've got this thread of wanting to help others. Have you done any introspection or thoughts on kind of where that came from? Because I imagine most people who step away in that sense or that regard, or go something that hard and then nothing, would not want anything to do with the sport, but you still had that desire, that want to help young girls. So like, where did this passion for helping young girls come from?
I mean, I come from the inner cities, just growing up in the outskirts of Washington, D.C. and Prince George's County. So, my mom, we weren't, in zone for the best schools, or, we were a part of Boys and Girls Club where it was just straight grassroots, community efforts of getting our youth involved and off the streets and things like that. So I'm rooted in just coming together at the community level and making big things happen. My mom, when we grew up, we went to a Catholic school. She wanted us to go to private school, since our school was technically on paper not the best for us to be going to. So I understood at a very young age the intention of making sure my access and my perspective was never restricted to how someone else put us in the box of what we were supposed to be in. And my mom always instilled that in me. She wanted me to make sure I was in control of all times of my choices and understanding what I wanted to do. So I understood that at a young age what it meant to be blessed to have somebody advocating for you, to be blessed to have somebody pulling for you, to step in for you, have a voice for you. So I know how that impacted my path. I mean, to where I am today, it started there. So yeah, I mean, I'm rooted in that. It's a part of who I am. I'm, from a young age, seeing my parents hustle, seeing my parents make sure we had the best. And so I'm going to always do that for my kids, for the community, for my community, for those who may not have access at the time. I'm going to see them because I was always seen. So it's a very important principle for me.
Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast and for supporting me and the work we are doing at Running for Real. Tracksmith is an independent running brand inspired by a deep love of the sport. Recently, as the weather has warmed and training is underway, I have enjoyed, as I always do, Tracksmith's Session Speed Shorts from their spring collection. Now, while I have not got the new colors, because at the end of the day, environmentally, the best items to have are the one you already own, they do have some beautiful new colors out in their spring collection, and they feature this exposed elastic waistband and a lightweight liner so they feel as light as air and barely there. From the first time I have worn them in 2019, they look exactly the same. They work exactly the same. These are durable and long-lasting and beautiful shorts. For first-time purchasers, you can use code TINANEW, that's Tina New, N-E-W, for $15 off your order of $75 or more. For returning customers, you can use code Tina Give, which is going to give you free shipping and a donation to support TrackGirlz. TrackGirlz is empowering girls physically, mentally, and socially through track and field empowerment workshops and grants. It is founded by Olympian Mechelle Lewis Freeman and just doing some wonderful work there. So be sure to go check that out. I also just quickly want to remind you that Boston and London, there will be events at Tracksmith. I will be at both locations for their events. So be sure to go check out the links in the show notes or at tracksmith.com to go see what events they are doing. The Boston Marathon weekend, at the London Marathon, they will have some fun shakeouts, some other fun events. Be sure to go check that out. And I would love to see you there if you're going to be there. Be sure to go to tracksmith.com/Tina to find out more about my favorite items. So be sure to use those codes and go get yourself some of those session shorts. Yeah, that's beautifully said about how, it's just a part of you and it's going to be something that you will continue to fight for and work towards improving, for your whole life. And did you find that painful during those periods to work on the sport that you were stepped away from, or was that a way of feeling like you were staying in touch with it or something else?
We mean when I was older, when I took the break?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because when I took the break, at the time I was okay with it because I thought I had another plan that was, of interest. I was in a relationship. I was, I was working a job on Madison Avenue that was, hard to walk in the door of one of the top ad agencies in the world. So it wasn't like I was, not doing something that wasn't special. Yep. And again, that goes back to what I was always taught, if you always got to stay in control of your choices. And I've said that before already, but the importance of that is setting yourself up that if it's not track, it has to be something else. So I'm a smart person. I had straight A's since I was a young girl, and I graduated cum laude in college, and I got my master's degree in integrated marketing and communication. So if I wasn't running track, I knew I could do other things. So when I took that break, I was just doing something else I was good at. So it wasn't at that time. It wasn't that I was looking at that I was missing something. I was looking at it that I was pouring into another piece of who I am. And so it's a continuous build because we're multifaceted individuals, human beings. So it was just that I was focusing on a different area of myself. And when I realized that, hey, I have some unfinished business, and I just wanted to pour back into that other side of me and get back to the track.
And how was the back to the track after that amount of time off?
It wasn't easy, but the key thing is just always having a plan. I was fortunate to be surrounded by very talented people when I trained. Being around my college teammates all were making the 2004 Olympic team, the 2005 World Championship team. So I knew I was surrounded in college with some very talented women. And so that also helped influence my mindset of, hey, you can do it too. They inspired me that I was capable of being successful at the next level as well. So it was good that when I was training, I was again surrounded by, that type of talent. And the coaches that poured into me helped me understand my event from a technical standpoint. That's when I really started to understand the science of the event, because I was talented in college and high school, but it was different. I was younger and I was just good. I was just using my talent. I was in shape. But now as an elite athlete, I was 26 now. And so it had to be a little bit more intentional. And so that's where I started to learn how to apply force, what that even meant, how to cover ground each step, and angles and physics and, things like that. So it just required a little bit more intention. So I knew exactly what worked and why something did not work. So my training was just very intentional. I followed the plan, stuck to the plan, and it actually worked.
Yeah. I love that. And for you, you thrived on having all the little things to kind of pay attention to focus on, to add up to that bigger plan. I'm assuming like those parameters, those little things you could tweak was that part of the thrill of getting back there?
I mean, it's that. And then also, you know, as a 26-year-old compared to where I was in college, I think the biggest difference also was my mindset. I was, you know, I understood who I was as a person more. You know, I was a little bit more intentional on my values, you know, faith, my standard of excellence, holding myself accountable to living up to those standards. If I said I was faithful, then you need to do faithful things, and take faithful actions, and believing in those things. So when I stepped on the track, it wasn't, you know, in college, I can run fast one weekend and then run slow another weekend. If I look next to me and I have a fast person, you know, that's breaking records in my lane. Now, you know, lining up as, you know, as an older athlete, then if I had to race Allison or Carmelita or Lauren Williams, then I had to understand that it was either me or them. And, you know, it's only 3 spots on the team. And it's either make or break. So you got to, you know, believe that the work that you're putting in and who you are is enough. And at that point, I believed that, and I really applied it. And, you know, the results showed that. But yeah, I would say the biggest difference was definitely paying attention to the details of what I was doing, but also understanding who I was as a person, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Thank you so much for sharing that. With the break that you took, those years away, that is, as we talked about on the Instagram Live, very unconventional to how the path that most athletes follow. And while people listening might not, you know, are probably not shooting for an Olympic spot, or they're probably not trying even maybe to get an age group award, what, from reflections now that this was, you know, well, I guess over a decade ago. Over a decade ago. What reflections do you have in terms of like the importance of that time away, like you said, to fill up other parts of yourself? Because I really find in the running space, it almost feels, and I think we talked about this, or you read about it. For me, like I quit the sport. I took only 3 months off, but I still felt like that was quite a, people were very like, oh, wow, you know, that I had like stepped away from the sport at all. And so I would love to just have a conversation about what that time taught you and why you would maybe encourage others to do the same if this conversation is kind of speaking to them.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest lesson I learned in that time away for me was the power of my faith. That coming back to the sport, I was able to apply, you know, what if for me, when I was in a long-term relationship, I was planning a wedding. I wasn't thinking I was going to run again. And we broke up, and I went through a time mentally where that was a real hard period, for me. And when I was going through that breakup, I grew up in the church. My parents, we grew up in the church. We were in the church every weekend, and so it wasn't an unfamiliar space for me. But I hadn't really, as an adult, had taken the lead in my journey, as my faith, as a, you know, just, you know, without being forced to go to Sunday school or singing in the choir every Friday night for practice. So now, you know, I started just to read the Bible more, pray more, and believe in that. And I started to apply those things. And so now I was like, well, if you read the things that you say that you're reading it and you believe it to be true, then if you apply it, then those things will happen. And for me, that really happened. I talk about every single day, like the habits that you have to commit to. And every single thing you do, like what you listen to, what you read, what you're scrolling through, that all is taking space, and so you have to be very intentional on what you're feeding and what you're starving. And so if I'm reading the Bible every day and now I'm on a track and I start to get that fear on the line and I start to feel that fear and that anxiety build up, and if you haven't been consistently feeding those spaces on how to combat those things, then you're going to lose to those situations. But if you've been reading and you say you're faithful and you have a scripture for, the Lord is my light, my salvation, whom should I fear? The Lord is my strength, whom should I be afraid? And if I'm on the line repeating that to myself, then I can bring that fear and anxiety under control because I'm consistent with what I'm pouring into myself every day. And that was the biggest difference was my faith. Like I had a word for everything. I had a scripture for everything. So if it was anything that I started to, because that was, like I said, in college, and those were the things that I lost against. Like the talent's always been there, but it was just not having enough mentality of thinking that I was good enough, that it can be me. And that was the difference stepping on the line now. Like I knew it could be me because I knew who I was as a human being. I knew the power of my God. And I knew that I was equipped. And the results came with that whole shift. It just came that way because I thought that and I believed it and it proved to be true.
Thank you for sharing that with, so if someone is let's kind of maybe switch to young girls in this sense, in terms of like, if you mentioned there about this confidence, this belief, why, it can be me, why not me? For those young girls, if they, what do you tell people? What do you within TrackGirlz encourage young girls or young adults to do to build their confidence if they don't have that? It could be me. Yeah. I can do this, because it's such a easy thing to hear someone like you say that, but then it's quite hard to put it into practice when you're not used to doing that. Yeah.
I mean, and at that time I wasn't used to doing it, but, but like I said, for me, it was my faith. What were the things that I was using as resources to build that confidence, and so you have to figure out what that is for you that you can use to build your confidence. For me, it was scripture. For me, it was the word and praying and things like that. So
how did you know that as you were going along? Like, was it just something you felt inside, like this feels good? Like, how would someone know that they were getting the right thing that was helping them?
For me, it was like when I was going through that breakup, I was living in New York City. And I had taken that non-paid internship at Y&R. And when we broke up, I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, just to keep it real, he was playing in the NFL. I was doing a non-paid internship. I didn't have to worry about money at that point. Being a young 23-year-old in a relationship like that. And, like I said, planning a whole wedding. And when that happened, I mean, we broke up 2 weeks after I moved to New York City, and I had to figure out quickly, like, what to do. If I didn't finish that internship, then I would have not graduated. Of course, my mom is like, come back to Maryland. We can figure it out, take a semester off. You can stay with me. And I wasn't, I didn't have the most money as a 23-year-old. I wasn't saving money at that time. Like, you should. Now, of course, I can advise differently. But I found myself living in a hotel in Secaucus, New Jersey. I was isolated and I was by myself. And at that time of being isolated, when I didn't have anybody, that's where I leaned back on that's where I found God again, being like, if I didn't know who else to talk to. So I just started praying again, and I started reading again, and like try to help me figure out like how to navigate this space, how to navigate this pain. And since it was a foundation of who I was, I just went back to it. You know, it wasn't like it was brand new to me. It's just that I wasn't using it. I didn't take the authority of it as an adult yet. And so I just leaned into it, and found myself there. So I just say in that time of isolation, that's where I really came into like understanding my power, like believing who I was and believing the power of God and applying it. So I was able to apply it to anything. Now I say, oh, I want to make an Olympic team. Then, okay, God said all things are possible. Then here we go. You know, so it's like if I say I'm a believer, then I have to act as so. And I just held myself to that level of accountability in a way that I had never before. So I just tell girls, like, just find what your foundation is, to have uncompromising motivation, and belief and faith in something. Like, you have to have something that you believe in beyond logic, because not everything is not going to make sense. Everything is not going to be 2 + 2 = 4 and a linear, solution. And when it goes to a place that is beyond understanding on a logical level, then you have to find that space that's going to keep moving you, and inspiring you to push forward. And that's when that magic happened for me. So it's just finding like, what's your motivation? Like, what is something that is enough for you to have that uncompromised, that uncommon courage, that uncompromised faith, for you to just keep pushing forward when you don't know, when it doesn't make sense for everybody else. Because trust me, and when I told everybody I was quitting my job on Madison Avenue to train for the Olympics,
yeah, I can imagine.
Nobody is going to think that makes sense. But yeah, you got to figure out like what your foothold is and your faith, and like what you really, really, truly believe in. That's going to keep you moving and believing and moving forward.
Oh, friends, I cannot believe we are here. We are just a few months away from becoming a sustainable runner, coming out into the world. It is available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, on Bookshop, on Waterstones, at Target, all kinds of places. And if you are a runner, if you care about the planet that you run on, you can use running to change the world for the better. And we have worked really hard. Zoe Rome and I wrote this book together as a practical guide for runners of all abilities and backgrounds who want to take meaningful action to protect our planet through your love of sport. We weave together personal stories, research, expert input, and we illustrate how every runner can better support your own endurance journey and how you can use those lessons with environmental action. And when I say this, I don't want you to think this is going to be us yelling at you, telling you to never fly again. We make this really sustainable, just in terms of your own running, in terms of being connected to your community, in terms of planet. This is not going to be a lecturing type book. It's just giving you lots of suggestions. We worked really hard to make it real, to make it just relatable to average people, because I know there's so much out there, particularly in the climate space, that makes us want to bury our heads in the sand, right? It makes us feel like we're not good enough, that we're part of the problem. This book is going to make you feel like part of the solution. And I've also created other goodies, giveaways that I will be mentioning in the coming weeks. But if you can go ahead and pre-order the book, as I said, you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Bookshop, Waterstones, Target. And you can also request it within your local running store. Becoming a Sustainable Runner, written by myself and Zoe Rome. I would really love if you would check it out. We have an amazing quote come in from Malcolm Gladwell, which was, "I've been waiting a long time for a book that puts running in the broader context of our bodies, our minds, and our planet." Becoming a Sustainable Runner is that book. I'm so grateful for that, and all the others who have given us quotes. So go check it out, becomingaSustainableRunner.com. I love that. Thank you. With this it leads in quite nicely to young girls who may show promise. I mean, I guess this applies either way, but regardless of gender, but young girls who show promise, there's quite often, and you, Dawn, and I talked about this on that live about showing promise. You and I both get a ton of people coming up to us saying, my kid just did this, and they're going to be the next Olympian, and I've got them training this, and this, and they're 6 years old. And I would love to go on to talk about you being an Olympian. You reached that highest level. You had so much there. What would you say to people who do maybe have someone they know who shows a lot of potential, or maybe even a young girl listening to this who they feel like they have something? And what did you say that you were called? The Speedy Twins? Was that it?
Oh, the Fast Twins.
Fast Twins. So they have some kind of nickname that people have given them like that, but they're feeling pressure, and now their sport is losing the joy because it's now more about, well, I got to keep performing, I got to improve, I got to impress, I got to not let people down. What would you say to people who either have that as someone they care about, or someone is in that situation themselves?
Yeah. I find it that when you're looking too far forward or too far behind, that is that space of uncertainty that causes the anxiety and the cycle of what if or what could, and it's a never ending cycle. And sometimes you have to pull back and stay and ground yourself in the presence, to understand that, one, find the gratitude in where you are, but two, focus on your day to day. Whenever when you think about, what your potential is, then focus on how you are building yourself today. And that starts with your daily habits. Consistency is the one thing I talk about with our girls in our program. Again, what I was talking about, what you're feeding every day, what you're starving every day, to make sure that you're prepared each day to face situations in the best way possible. So I just tell people just to focus on where you are today. Of course, you always want to have a plan. You want to establish your values. I always tell people to establish your values, understand what's your drivers, what you're holding yourself accountable to. I know I keep saying that, but it's so important. That way, when you're making choices, that it's not a hard decision, and it's not, the uncertainty kind of leaves there because it's aligned to what you value. And now it gives you a little bit more certainty on what direction to go. So just focus on, what matters the most to you. Focus on the consistency of your habits. So that way, when you're faced with choices, the paths to take. When you're faced with trying to figure out what's next for you, then it's a bit easier for you to decide that, and just focused on just staying consistent in who you are as a person, and focus on your work, because no one can ever speak against the work. So as long as the work is there, the consistency of who you are is there, then everything else falls in place.
For someone who hears you saying that and says, okay, that sounds really good in principle, but they're just in a state of fear. I just don't want to let people down. I can't think about my values because I've got my next race coming in 2 days and I need to perform because otherwise I won't get a scholarship and then I won't be able to da. What would you say there?
What was your preparation? If you are, the anxiety comes from not knowing. When you know. And so that's why I say the biggest difference was, for me, one, when I lined up as, the 26-year-old, the anxiety went away because I was feeding those things that allowed me to be prepared. You know, like I said, if I'm on the line and I get that anxiety coming, then I'm good, because for me, I said I was faithful. So I was reading the word every day, and the word says, don't be anxious. You know, the word says, so, you know, it depends on like what you're feeding yourself. So when you're faced in those situations, then you can tame those moments. And so are you prepared? You know, like, yes, you have a race. Did you do everything the coach said for you to do? So however the race is going to be, it's the best that it's going to be, because you did everything you said you were going to do. And it's not going to be perfect, because I didn't learn that until I was 26, you know, like, and so now, you know, I that's why I try to, tell these girls, like, look, I've been where you are. I was that girl who saw the person next to me, and she was fast on paper and she looked real strong. And so I try to pour into those things, you know, those habits for them. But yeah, I just tell, even at a young age, just focus on what you can control. Stay in that bubble, stay in that space, stay in the present. And just know that as long as you work on the things that you can work on, everything else outside of you is not for you to work on. It's not for you to, you can only focus on what you can. So just stay in that space, just stay prepared. And then the outcome of that, you can trust the outcome of that, because you did everything you could do.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. With regards to your own journey, we've mentioned, Olympian ran in the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing. You mentioned earlier about how track was viewed as a once every 4 years kind of gets its time in the limelight sport. And while we know, and most of the listeners would know that, yeah, there's championships and world level competitions every year. But I am curious your thoughts on, Dawn and I have talked about this in terms of having kids. We are definitely seeing more people who are trying to plan out the kind of best down year of the 3 in between to have a child, to get back, to not to necessarily wait to the end of their career to have a kids, but do it in between. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like seeing this kind of unfold in terms of, these women taking the opportunity to kind of plan it out so they can still get back to their sport.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, times have definitely changed. You think about the time when we grew up in sport, a woman, we were scared to talk about, our personal issues and pregnancy. I mean, if you were pregnant and trying to be the best in the world, it was no empathy for that. The biggest, it was about performance. It was about, what are you doing for me on the result side? And it was little empathy it was little empathy to separate out woman from athlete. It was just the focus of just the athlete, and you couldn't be the woman side of, oh, I may want kids one day, and still run fast, But I just think, times change, as and people evolve, and now you're in a space where diversity and inclusion is at the forefront of conversations around the world. It's at the forefront of corporate America. It's at the forefront of organizations. It's that equal rights are, continuously evolving from equal pay to it's just different times, So during my time as an athlete, we were still, even safe sport. I mean, even safe sport, ways that certain things you speak differently back then, that you can't say things the same anymore. But yeah, we're just moving as a world in the direction of inclusivity, which is good. And so now it's good for a woman to feel like she can do it all. You don't have to compromise. You don't have to be an athlete and not think about, those other sides of who you are. And it's a good thing now. I mean, now we can feel confident that we can even have children and run and throw and jump still. So yeah, I just think that we've come a long way. And so we are in a good place to continue to evolve. And so now you're seeing the confidence for women to step up and believe and speak up for the things that they truly want from themselves in and out of the sport.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that about this time and how things are going down. With you being a formerly Nike sponsored athlete, you said you were scared to say anything. That I'm assuming probably was part of it was that you were working with Nike, who, as times have changed, as conversations have been had about the way that they were treating women in terms of pregnancy and maternity. So did you worry about that in terms of like, what if I happen to accidentally get pregnant, my contract will be cut? Or was that just something you pushed out of your mind?
Yeah, I mean, no, I've never, for me, I never experienced having to deal with that. I just never had the experience at the time that I wanted to be pregnant. So I never was faced with those crossroads. And when I was competing at 26, I finished running at 29 or 30. And during that time, I was just focused on running. I wasn't even thinking about starting a family. So it was fortunate enough for me that the timing of my own personal desires didn't conflict. Now, since I never experienced it, then I just don't know how that conflict or if it would have, I don't know what those crossroads would have been if I felt like I wanted to have a child and still compete and feel that uncomfortable situation. So yeah, I never got to experience having to deal with that personally. I just know as a woman, you always, I just have been in a room where you may hold back just because you don't want to be assumed a certain way or being too aggressive or being too outspoken. And that's not directly tied to Nike. I'm just directly tying that to being a woman and feeling that you just didn't have that space to, and as a Black woman, I've been a minority woman in corporate America, especially at all times in the advertising business. In the marketing business. So, I've always had those feelings of, holding back on who I am, maybe not speaking loud enough to, or wearing my hair a certain way. So I can only imagine just, being in a space to where you just don't feel you can be fully who you are or living up to your full desires. So yeah, it's just we've just come a long way. And it's good to see where we are to now. You have people like Allison Felix and Alyssa Montano being able to pave ways for the next generation to feel comfortable enough to have babies and come back and have examples of you can still do the things that you want to do. You can do it all. So I feel like we're in a good place now, a better place.
That's true. Yes, still got work to do, but improving. And if you're comfortable saying so, you did talk about this in the live too. You and Dawn both talked about the way you were treated at track races for being Black women out there and how that, if you're comfortable to share about that, that's something that I think people wouldn't necessarily think would be a part of it, but how that could have absolutely affected your performance had you let it?
Yeah, I think when I remember, dealing with Dawn, Dawn and I were teammates in 2008. And Dawn, of course, ended up winning the gold medal. Mm-hmm. And so I know she always had to deal with those conversations, like she was saying, just the colorism, being a darker skinned Black woman, and just what comes with that. And so I just think that as a Black woman, we've grown through the years of just not feeling 100% of being able to express who we are. You always, when we grew up, we had to make sure we weren't, your parents will always be like, you can't be screaming in public, you can't bring extra attention to you. So you grow up in a way of being held back. You grow up in a way of making sure that people aren't overly judging you. And so doesn't, people aren't holding it against you, of who they think you are. But I will say that as an athlete, I fortunate enough for me, my work, and I say my work as in my talent, and I said this yesterday when I had a speaking engagement, like they can never deny your work, and that's people. Mm-hmm. Like people can never deny your work. People can never deny your gift. And so it was fortunate enough for me, my gift did a lot of my speaking. And that can never be denied. So I could attend the University of South Carolina as a minority, and I could be a part of the first national championship in any sport at a university. I can still be a 4.0 student as a freshman at the University of South Carolina, and do those things because people can never deny your talent. People can never deny your gift. So that was one thing my mom always, again, instilled in us, was you have to focus on your gift, focus on who you are, pour into who you are, because that can never be denied. And so I've always had that mindset. And so I've never allowed who I am on the outside no one could ever use that against me, because they can't speak against my gift. There's nothing you can do about it.
No, yeah. I love that. Thank you for that. Because that's, that's always going to be the truth, isn't it? That's what you've had as a theme throughout this whole episode. To wrap it up here, for TrackGirlz, what do you envision, if you would love to jump forward in 10 years, what do you hope TrackGirlz is up to then? Yeah,
I would love for TrackGirlz to have our programming in schools and local community organizations nationwide. So girls have access to movement and sport in all communities, no matter where you are. I want to have my own TrackGirlz facility, local facility. Yes, I eventually.
Where would it be?
Yes, wherever I'm living, I don't know. I'm in Texas right now. My husband and our family, we've been moving every 3 years for the last 10 years until this is the first time. We're in year 4 in Texas. But now since we have school age kids, that's helped slow us down. But wherever I am in those 10 years, I definitely want to have a local facility for TrackGirlz. And having a consistency in the local community. So that's definitely what I see, a facility, a curriculum throughout the world, and just making sure that we're able to give millions of dollars away for girls to have access. Yes, to have access to a sport that has incredible potential to influence girls in the best ways as possible.
I love that so much. Thank you. And I want to remind people listening, if you use the code TinaGive at Tracksmith, you can give a donation, or Tracksmith will give a donation on your behalf with your order. So you can do that. Or if you want to go make a straight donation, where can they go if they want to just go donate and support?
Yes, you can go to trackgirlz.org, and that's TrackGirlz with a Z. I had to add a little, finesse.
I love it.
to the name. But yeah, TrackGirlz with a Z.org, and it's a donate button on there. So please support us, support our growth, help us really increase our impact to girls around the world.
I love that. And Mechelle, where can they find you if they want to follow along in future?
Yes, follow me on Instagram. I have to do better, but you can at least find me on Instagram. But on Instagram is Mechelle, M-E. My name is spelled wrong 99.9% of the time. But it's Mechelle Lewis, Lewis Freeman, Freeman, all of it. Okay. Follow me, please. And just keep up with my journey between TrackGirlz, teaching people how to be faster, and coaching the women's relays for USA, and a mother, wife. I'm trying to do it all over here, Tina.
I know you absolutely are. You are a hero. I'm so in awe of all you're able to do. It's amazing. And be an incredible human to go along with it. I don't know how you do it all. So thank you so much for joining me. I once again loved our conversation. We could have easily talked another hour about all the things you're up to. But yeah, thanks for joining me, and I look forward to the next one.
Thanks so much, Tina. I appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm just glad our paths cross. If we have different opportunities for speakers for TrackGirlz, you would be amazing to be someone that can come in and influence our girls, and just keep using your platform for doing the things that you do. I appreciate you. So thank you.
Right back at you, friend. Thank you. The Running for Real podcast and everything we do here at Running for Real would not be possible if it wasn't for the Running for Real team. While I am the person who you hear from most often and maybe the face of the brand, the rest of our team are such critical pieces of what we do. And without them, I think I'd just be running around in circles with ideas. So I want to take a moment to thank our team. To Jeremy Nessel, who's been with me since the very beginning. Kat McKay, Sally Pontarelli, Kelsey Wang, Sandy Gutierrez, Louise Murphy, Andrew Basola, Alexandria Will, and Maria Vargas. Thank you to each and every one of you for all that you give to Running for Real and our community. I appreciate you, and I'm so thankful for having you as a part of the team. I really loved that conversation with Mechelle, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please be sure to go check out that Instagram live we did with Dawn Harper Nelson. You will really enjoy it. And go follow her on TrackGirlz, on her own personal pages. She's a really wonderful human doing incredible things. And TrackGirlz is an organization I really passionately want to support. Again, if you like Tracksmith clothing, if you've already purchased something with Tracksmith and use code TINAGIVE when you check out, they will make a donation to TrackGirlz on your behalf. So you can find links to everything we talked about in the show notes by going to runningforreal.com/episode 349. That's episode 349. And in there, you will find links to everything we talked about today, as well as our sponsors for today, which are Tracksmith. So again, use the code TINAGIVE to get that, to give that donation to TrackGirlz, or you can use code TINANEW if you want to get $15 off your order of $75 or more. I also want to encourage you to go check out Dri Seat. That's DRI-SEATS.com, dryseats.com. And it's easiest to just go to the link in the show notes. That's dri-seats.com and use code R4R20 and you'll get 20% off your first order to go get that sweatproof seat cover. Go check it out. I also want to encourage you to go pre-order yourself a copy of the book I wrote with Zoe Rome, Becoming a Sustainable Runner. If you go to becomingaSustainableRunner.com, you can go check out all the links that we have there and get it from your favorite bookstore. Thank you so much for listening, my friends. I will see you on Monday for a Together Run, on Wednesday for a For Real episode, and Friday for another one of these. See you then.